Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another Goosebumps talk type of video. Now, I've wanted to make this video for quite some time. It took me a while to pick these books for this subject matter, and obviously if you clicked on this video, you're here to hear about what books I would pick to put in future Scholastic Goosebumps book tins. Now, if you're not familiar with these book tins re-release, reprinted to make them look like the original books. And they've been doing this since about 2015. They've released 3 of them. They have a purple tin, an orange tin, and a light green tin. If you want to be really technical, Target technically did their unofficial book tin back in 2015. They have yet to re-release of any kind. And if you're not familiar with the Target 5, those books were Night of the Living Dummy 2, Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes, A Shocker on Shock Street, The Blob That Ate Everyone, and The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight. I will not be covering those books in this book tin simply because I think Target technically made an unofficial book tin back in 2015, so I didn't want to put them in the book tins I'm making. So the books I chose do not include any sequel books, and I did that for a reason, and it's because I feel like you can save the sequels later down the road. I feel like a lot of these sequel books, maybe minus one from the original 62, has had a re-release via Classic Goosebumps, and I think these book tins only try to aim to do about 2 a book tin, maybe 2 to 3. I know the first one was basically ones that they had already done for some reason, but the ones I picked, I decided to pick and coordinate via colors that we haven't seen yet. I chose yellow, blue, and red, and I'm going in that order. So the yellow book tin, I chose some really good books. I didn't really pick a theme per se, because I don't really think they really have a theme, except like the purple one has more of an adventure feel for the books they picked for the most part. But I did kind of keep with the mantra of keeping at least 2 books they've already released in Classic Goosebumps and the reprint made to look like the original form. So that way readers can have a copy of the ones that look like the originals, and on top of it, give it some books in the tins that Classic Goosebumps has not released and that kids probably haven't gotten their hands on yet. So, the first 5 here is the yellow tin, I'm calling it. These 5 books I picked simply because I think these would be great picks for a book tin. This one specifically, I only chose 1 book that's been put in Classic Goosebumps. The others have at least 2. But I think the books I picked would be ones that fans would love to see in the tin sets at some point. And let me know in the comment section, before we even get into my tins, which books would you want in a book tin? Leave the 5 that you would pick from the original 62 down in the comment section below. Okay, so the first book I'm calling the yellow book tin. I don't know why. I just picked the color for these. The first book I have is Welcome to Camp Nightmare. Now, I picked this book simply because it hasn't seen a Classic Goosebumps reprint, and honestly, we don't have much camp books in Classic Goosebumps. I mean, you have the horror Camp Jelly Jam. We don't even have Curse of Camp Cold Lake. We don't have Ghost Camp. We don't have this book, so I went ahead and added it. I think it'll be a great addition for nostalgic fans. A lot of original fans that grew up in the 90s, if they see this in a book tin and it's plastered on the book tin cover, they're going to be all over this. So I think this is a great pick for the first book in the yellow tin, and that's why I chose it, because lack of camp books. Now this second one I picked, I think this is a travesty. This book has yet to be reprinted in Classic Goosebumps. It kind of irks me and makes me really upset in a lot of ways. So I went ahead and added it myself. And that book is Attack of the Mutant. Kids are being introduced to Dr. Maniac. They don't know the blueprint to Dr. Maniac. They need to experience this book. I think this will be a great pick. It's an iconic cover. They made a video game around this character, the mutant, back in the 90s. I mean, such a nostalgic book. That's why I didn't include two books that were already reprinted in Classic Goosebumps, because I wanted this one and this 10 specifically. I think this one would also be something that if fans see it, they're going to be like, ooh, what is that? I got to have that. So Attack of the Mutant is the second book in the yellow 10. Now the third book is the only book from Classic Goosebumps that has been reprinted that I included in this one. And I kind of wanted to offer, still a good book, but something that fans could, appreciate because it's a good book, and, it holds its ground, and the cover is actually, it's not the greatest, but I think fans would appreciate this with the color scheme and all of that, and that is The Headless Ghost. Yeah, it's a solid pick for a book 10. Eventually it's going to happen if they decide to bring these back, maybe when the TV show starts or whatnot. This would be one that I would want in there. So yeah, that's the third one in the yellow 10. Now the fourth one, I don't have the original cover for this, but I went with this pick simply because to kind of give it a more atmospheric tone for the 10. The other ones had the camp atmosphere, then you had the superheroes, and you have your creepy haunted house. Kind of change it up here with the formula, kind of give like a snowy atmosphere and a different take on a story. This is kind of unique for Original 62 in some ways. So I went with Beware the Snowman. I think this would be a great pick. Kids might see this around the holidays and be like, oh, it could be a Christmas book, cash grab for Scholastic. This would be a no-brainer to put in one eventually. So, yeah. And the fact is, Classic Goosebumps has been coming out for quite some time, and this one has yet to come out. Let's go ahead and release it in there. And then the last one I picked for the yellow 10, this book has never been reprinted. In 2003 reprints, it hasn't been reprinted in Classic Goosebumps at all. And part of me is like, should I even want this in a book 10? But I think it's about time that fans can get their hands on a easily easily obtainable copy without having to pay an arm and a leg. So I went with a Halloween, cabin in the woods type feeling story, and that was Werewolf Skin is the final book in the yellow 10 here. The spirit of this 10, centers around atmosphere, I guess. If I did have a theme, they each have a distinct setting, separate from each other, and a whole different feel and setup to a story. But this would be a great book 10 book. This would be great. Because I still think the originals, the original books like this, the value might go down a little bit, but the book 10s would definitely satisfy the hunger the market would have. Unless, people have already broke the code and started buying Scholastic India versions. But nonetheless, I would love to see this in a book 10. For sure. So yeah, these 5 books are the yellow book 10 here. The next book 10 I am bringing up is what I'm calling blue book 10. Now this one has 2 books that have been reprinted in Classic Goosebumps, and the rest haven't. And I picked these books simply because of covers specifically. And one particular book I picked, you might be like, why'd you pick that? It's because it has a sequel in Slappy World, kind of, but they don't have the book actually released. So this is a way to get it released. So the blue book 10, I'm starting off with Ghost Beach. Yeah, Ghost Beach would be the first book in the blue 10. It has that kind of summertime, it doesn't really, it's kind of like autumn. It's very chilly outside in this book, but it does have that creepy atmosphere. It has that ghost setting, something unnerving. It has that message, who to trust, offers a different setup to a Goosebumps book. I mean, there are other Goosebumps books that kind of do it better than this, but I think the cover alone is iconic enough to make people want to buy it. That $30 price tag. But yeah, I would definitely pick Ghost Beach to go in the blue book 10. So the second book, I went with one of my personal favorites, even though I gave it like a B in my review of it. I just really dig this book. I really love everything about this book for the most part. It does get kind of predictable, and that's kind of the biggest drawback I have with it. But nonetheless, I think this would be a great one to see in the tins, specifically because we never had a 2003 reprint of it, even though we have a classic Goosebumps reprint. Having something that looks sort of like the original in reprint form would be cool with the Jacobus art. And that is Phantom of the Auditorium. Yeah, kind of a different story here. You got a school auditorium, you know, it's like a whodunit mystery, but it's a good book. It's a good book. My book number 3 for the Blue Book tin. Now this one has yet to come out in classic Goosebumps, and this is I would say this is a cult favorite. There's like a cult following with this book. People who really love this book really love this book. And I would love to see it in a book 10. I would definitely throw down $30 if I saw this in the book 10. And that would be Calling All Creeps. Yeah, this is a great book. I haven't reviewed it on my channel, but this is one of my childhood favorites. I love this book. The ending really makes the book memorable in a lot of ways. I think this would be a good one. Alien story, lizard men. It's cool. Yeah. So now, the 4th book in the blue tin. I'm not a fan of this book at all. I've only read it once, and I'm not gonna lie, I did not like it. I haven't reviewed it on my channel yet, but when I get to it, I'll probably explain why. But yeah, this book makes sense to have in a book 10 simply because, like I said, there is a sequel to this in Slappy World called Revenge of the Invisible Boy that deals with this character, Brent. Now, what happened was Scholastic reprinted Let's Get Invisible, which has nothing to do with Brent, instead of this book. So this would be a good time to go ahead and add this to the book 10 library to kind of make up for that, and that is My Best Friend is Invisible. Why not? Just why not? And then the 5th book in the blue tin, kind of on the same spirit as Werewolf Skin. A lot of people don't have this book in their collection. It's a pain in the neck to find. Cheap. I had to pay I think 16 or 17 for mine or something like that. This would be a good book to add into the book 10 so people can finally get a copy, and especially with My Best Friend's Invisible for the newer kids, the Calling All Creeps, and then the Ghost Beach cover speaking to you. This book definitely would sell a book 10 at the price tag of $30. People would definitely break down and pay it because they get the other books along with it, and that is I Live in Your Basement. Yeah, this is the final book I would put in the blue tin here. It's never been reprinted. It just I think it's about time. You know, these books are pushing 30 years old. This one's about 25 years old, almost. But yeah, in all that time, it has never seen a reprint in the United States. I mean, come on, add this to the book 10. Make that the final book to the blue book 10 set. And then the final book 10 set I have is what I'm calling the Reds book 10 set. And I picked these simply because covers, books that people recognize, and I picked some good ones. There are 3 of them in this one that have been reprinted. And the reason why I did that is simply because of trying to switch up the type of stories in here. It just so happened that this tin would have 3 books that have already been reprinted in the 2003 reprints and the classic Goosebumps reprints. But I think the books I chose are pretty solid, except the first one. I'm not a really big fan of it. As a matter of fact, I think I kind of hate this book in a lot of ways. So the first book I picked is You Can't Scare Me. And I picked it because of the cover. The Mud Monsters were pretty popular back in the 90s, popular mascot. Why not add it to the book 10s in the red book 10 set, I'm calling it. I think it would definitely trigger the nostalgic factor for people when they see it, and maybe people would want to buy it. So, yeah. The next book I literally just included because it's one of the best-selling Goosebumps books of all time. I think it's one of the only ones they haven't put in the book tins yet, and that is Deep Trouble. That's my second book for the Red Book tin. I'm not the biggest fan of this story. Mermaids really don't do it for me. But it does have the nostalgic factor. It does introduce Billy and Sheena. They have done classic Goosebumps reprints of it. I think that people, especially kids, would love to get their hands on something that looks like the original. So this would be a good pick for the second book of the Red Tin. Now the third book, I went with one that hasn't been reprinted since like the 2003 reprints. And I think the story is pretty solid, and it's very edgy for a Goosebumps book, I have to say. It's very edgy, and I just want to see it in a book 10. I love this cover art. It's probably one of my favorite cover arts of all time from the original 62. It's in my top 10, I feel. And it came from Beneath the Sink. Yeah, this is a really... I really like this book in a lot of ways. I haven't reviewed this one on my channel yet, but I have read it sort of recently, and I kind of enjoyed this in a lot of ways. It's not my favorite or anything, but it does hit on a lot of notes some books never even go to. So this would be a good one, a good change of pace, and kind of throw a little change up in there. The fourth book, on the Red Tin I have here is one that I reviewed recently, and I really love this book. I'm not trying to like fill these book tins full of my favorite books, but I genuinely feel people would love this, especially kids like that haven't read this yet, because it has been reprinted. I think people would clamor for this, and this one also has another cult following behind it, and that is Ghost Camp. Another camp story, because we already have Horror Camp Jelly Jam and Classic Goosebumps. Why not have Welcome to Camp Nightmare in the yellow tin, and then this book in the red tin? Now, I know some of you might be like, where's Curse of Camp Cold Lake? Well, that can happen later on. I'm just picking another wave of 3 because the likelihood of them making like 4 or 5 of them is like slim to none at this point, I guess. And this is just a hypothetical video, but yeah, this story is pretty gruesome, pretty graphic, and it might genuinely scare some kids. So having something that's genuinely scary in the tins would be really good. We already have Werewolf Skin and I Live in Your Basement. Those books are really scary. Came from Beneath the Sink also has its moments. But this one is truly scary as well, if not even scarier, and I would love to see that in the book tins. Alright, and the last book I have in the red book tin is one that I'm surprised they haven't even put this in the book tins yet myself. It's such an iconic cover. People will see this and be like, yep, gotta have that. And it is Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns. Halloween story, iconic Tim Jacobus cover, one of my favorite Tim Jacobus covers from the original 62. No brainer. It kind of does drag in the beginning, but it has an iconic twist at the end, very memorable. And yeah. So let's recap the book tins one more time, starting in reverse order. The ones I just went over. The red book tin. So we have Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns, Ghost Camp, It Came from Beneath the Sink, Deep Trouble, and You Can't Scare Me. Alright, so the next one I did was the blue book tin. Let's recap this real quick. We have I Live in Your Basement, My Best Friend is Invisible, Calling All Creeps, Phantom of the Auditorium, and Ghost Beach. And to recap the final book tin, the first one I did, the yellow book tin, we have Werewolf Skin, Beware the Snowman, The Headless Ghost, Attack of the Mutant, and Welcome to Camp Nightmare. So yeah, these are just some book tins I made up, in case Scholastic, if you're watching, if you're trying to find books or book ideas to put into future book tins, feel free. Use these. Use the color schemes I came up with. I just called them red, blue, and yellow simply because those colors just haven't been used on the book tins. Um, but yeah, these are basically the books I would recommend putting in book tins. I think that these would be ones I would want to see as a collector, and also I would want to see newer generations of kids getting introduced to these books specifically, because I think that each of them would serve an impact by having them for availability on the market. So yeah, like I said before I got into my book 10 books I would put in them, let me know in the comment section down below, what books would you put into book 10s that haven't already been put in them, and maybe even explain why, or just let me know which books that you like that I put in there, which books you disliked, whatever you feel like. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.